on many different areas, but we are so focused on this call about the election integrity and really appreciate it. And please, as any information you want to share with me, I do appreciate it. We can get that out. So thank you.
Ma'am.
Okay, so let's move on to Representative J.C. Jaton, who I know has been working many hours as the senator. Also, I watch it on late at night. So J.C. or Representative Jaton, will you please go start?
Yeah, no. So good morning, everybody. Diverging off of election integrity just for a moment, I think it is worth noting Senator Hughes did manage to get the heartbeat bill passed out of the Senate onto the governor's desk yesterday, and I think that's pretty awesome. That was a big deal. That's an important bill, and so congratulations, Senator Hughes and Shelby Slauson, Representative Slauson from the House side. We managed to make that happen. So. But no, we had that big deadline last night, and so we had session until midnight last night, and it's hard cut off. And so actually, that last bill was at 11:59, and by the time he hit the gavel to pass that one, it was midnight, and we had to had a point of order called on, and they had to withdraw that bill. And so it's a hard deadline, and we're done with the second reading of House bills, and so now we're going to focus on the Senate bills. Y'all did do an amazing job with the phone calls and the emails on those bills. I know you had one of them on there was a bill that I had, the 2546, which had to do with the Secretary of State, having the ability to train, audit, and then provide enforcement for the voter rolls. It was a hybrid method of handling the voter rolls versus having the Secretary of State centralize all the voter rolls and control it. And it's a different tactful way of handling the voter roll maintenance. And I think there's some discussions of maybe finding a way to get that in SB 7. If not, then looking at other bills on the Senate side. But because of the grassroots stepping up on this, there's been a lot more discussions, and I've had conversations with Senator Betancourt and Senator Colcourse and others to see where we might be able to fit some of these important bills in. And so again, thank you all for your work on that. Senate Bill 7, as Senator Hughes mentioned, we'll have that in conference soon, and looking forward to seeing how we can make that an even better bill and get that to the governor's desk. And let's see, what else I got? 1128, House Bill 1128 was heard in the Senate side. I just happened to step in onto the Senate floors when it was coming up, and Senator Hughes was leading that committee. And that's the bill that is part of SB 7, HB 6, dealing with who's allowed into polling locations, ballot board areas, and tabulation areas. And it's one of those things when you have an election code that's so big that you print out about 1,000 pages. We have all different areas of who's allowed in there, no penalties for enforcing that. And so we codified that all in one location. It didn't change who had access. It just codified in one location, put a penalty on it. It was surprising how much confusion there was about who's actually allowed in there. The elections administrators were upset and then surprised that they didn't actually have access. And we did end up including them in the final draft of being able to be in there for specific purposes. But the whole goal of the bill was to make sure that only people that had a reason to be there was allowed in the polling locations. That protects against voter intimidation. You're either there to administer the election, vote, provide technical services, or drop off supplies, and that's it. You don't have any other reason to be there. You should be removed, and there should be penalties for you being there. And so I think it's an important bill. Appreciate Senator Hughes hearing that on the Senate side. And jumping into, well, I did see a question about 1399. I did want to mention, I know there was a lot of the grassroots that was very interested in that one. And that's the gender modification for minors. We did not get to that on the calendar yesterday before midnight. I believe there is a Senate bill. I think Senator Perry may have that one that's coming over, and so we'll still have time to listen to that one. So there's still a chance on that one. And redistricting, there won't be a redistricting meeting until we don't plan a redistricting meeting before the end of this session. Things are still subject to change, but I think we're looking at maybe revamping that in June or July, and we'll start having those meetings again. It's going to be available virtual. We're still going to take electronic testimony. It's still going to focus on all different areas of the state. And it's still going to be important to have y'all's input on those redistricting maps and your specific areas to make sure that we're looking at these maps and providing districts that best represent the people that are there and fairly represents them. And so we want this process to be transparent still, but with the end of session coming and everything happening, we are pushing that out until the summer. And so I think that's all the updates I have.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you. I appreciate everything you've done and really appreciate you getting up early this morning and joining us to give us. I know last week was pretty intensive. What was it, 3 o'clock in the morning or 3:05 you adjourned? And
yes.
So, but we did read your comments, and thank you for texting or emailing, whatever it was, and we read it to the group. So
good. Yeah, sorry I missed that one. I was a little tired of that one.
I totally understand, and that was a very good excuse. So let's move on over to Dion. Dion, did you want to add anything to what the representative and senator have just mentioned?
No, I will say that I look forward to SB7 actually being sent from the House to the Senate. I have been a little bit concerned that it's taken so long, but I am sure that the process is just a little bit slow right now. So, but I do want to thank publicly all the work that Senator Hughes and Representative Jaton have done on this. It's a mammoth work and a work of love. So I appreciate it. And I look forward to registering on some of those one-shot bills that are coming over from the House to the Senate. So you'll be seeing me soon, Senator Hughes.
Oh, good.
Well, we always like her out there. And I know like Karen's there. I think Tom, I think Sean, many of you on this call, I know are going to, are there at the Capitol, and we thank each and every one of you to having your voices heard, being there in person and engaging and building relationships, which we know is so crucial to helping get our something done and allowing people to hear the voice of all of us. So a lot of you that are out there, when you're there at the Capitol, it does represent a lot of us and having that voice heard. So thank you for doing that. And I know that Dion goes down there and spends a lot of time, also stays the night at the Capitol. Well, I don't know if she sleeps in the chairs, but she's there representing all of us too. So, and Karen, I know you're there too. So thank you all for that. Now we are going to move into hearing our speaker today. We are, Hans is truly, I consider him a friend. I can call him. I can talk to him about many different topics. I hope that you have had an opportunity to read his bio that was sent out yesterday when with the reminder, but just a couple highlights. I've known Hans for many years. I think, Hans, it was back in 2008 or 9 when you were working on voter ID here in Texas.
That's right. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken about that, and helped us get that through. So he has been committed to Texas and election reform and making sure that we do it right. And I think he will probably say that we really do a lot of things correctly here in Texas. He was also appointed by President Donald Trump to the Presidential Advisory Committee on election integrity, and that was in 2017. He's had been involved and managed multiple think tanks, but I mean, he is truly that expert when it comes to election integrity, election fraud, and he's with the Heritage Foundation, and he has many fabulous articles that comes out and speaks to what's going on at the moment. And I thought this would be important for Hans to come join us and for all of you to hear his perspective. And he, you know, he works across the nation. And I did ask him if he had any bit of information about Arizona that he might share that with us. So I want to introduce you to a friend, a person that I respect, that I can call on and ask for help, and he's there. And so please join us and in sharing your knowledge with us. And Hans, I'm going to tell you, I have to admit, I can't say your last name. And
That's okay.
I even had my friend Dion help me, and she sent me the recording for pronunciation, and I still mess it up. So I'm going to let you say your last name.
Tony, I appreciate you inviting me here. I'm Hans von Spakovsky, and I know it's not a typical name for somebody who was born and raised in Alabama, but you know, but yeah, look, I'm not a Texan, but I've been doing things in Texas now for quite a while. Yes, I was the lead off witness back when the Texas Senate was considering its voter ID law. In fact, I flew down there, and I assumed I'd be sitting in a committee room, you know, at a desk in front of a table, the way witnesses usually are. And then I was told when I got there that the Senate had decided to meet as a committee of the whole. So I actually was down in the well of the Senate while Democratic senators tried to barbecue me by asking me questions about voter ID. I was there for 2 hours while they were questioning me, which I think is pretty unusual for a witness. And I know Senator Hughes, I heard him talking about Greg Abbott being very much in favor of these election integrity bills. I want to take credit for that because Greg Abbott and I went to law school together. He was in my class at Vanderbilt, all right? Look, let me tell you, there's two things that are going on right now. Okay, first of all, as you know, the Texas legislature is working very hard to pass election reforms that will fix the vulnerabilities in the system. Georgia did it. Florida did it. Both those bills passed. They passed omnibus bills making very good changes in their laws. They've been signed into law by the governor. Arizona has passed a number of these provisions. Iowa passed a good provision that's been signed into law. So this is going on right now in state legislatures. But at the very same time, all of this work, hard work, may come for naught if HR 1 and its equivalent S1 passes in the U.S. Congress. You know, you've heard about that bill. That's the omnibus election bill that Democrats put in. The fact that they think it's their most important bill is shown by the fact that it was the very first bill they introduced. It's a 900-page monstrosity that would lead to a complete federal takeover of the administration of elections. So it would wipe out, basically, it would wipe out every safety security protocol that states have. With regard to Texas, you would no longer be able to enforce your voter ID law. You would no longer be allowed to enforce your absentee balloting law that requires an excuse to use an absentee ballot. It's just one provision after another. The law passed, the bill passed the U.S. House more than a month ago on a straight party line vote, with one exception. Benny Thompson, a Democrat from Mississippi, voted against it because he said that while he liked the bill, his constituents didn't like two of the provisions, which obviously would affect people in Texas too. One, your Texas legislature would no longer be allowed to do redistricting because this federal bill would require independent redistricting commissions to be set up, which, by the way, have racial and gender quotas for its membership and other just atrocious provisions like that. Second, it sets up a public funding program for people running for Congress. So that means all of you, your tax funds would be subsidizing candidates, Democratic candidates and others who you would never vote for in a million years, and you would certainly never give money for. The bill was marked up this week, Tuesday, in the U.S. Senate. A whole series of amendments were proposed, particularly by Senator Cruz, to try to get rid of some of the worst provisions. All of them failed in tie votes in the committee. So at some point, probably later this summer, Schumer will probably try to discharge it from the committee, bring it to the floor. It's really important that that bill gets stopped. Everybody is concentrating on 2 U.S. senators, Senator Manchin of West Virginia and Senator Sinema of Arizona, to convince them to not vote to get rid of the filibuster, because that's the key to stopping the bill. The one thing I would tell all of you to do is contact the offices, whether it's email, phone calls, or letters, of those 2 senators telling them they should vote against this bill. They should not end the filibuster. And frankly, state legislators also all over the country ought to be doing that. Look, the Arizona legislature actually passed a resolution against HR 1 because of the fact that it takes away the power of the states and their residents to decide what the election rules are. Now, the states, as we said, and as you all heard earlier, are working on trying to fix the vulnerabilities. On February 1st, we put out a fact sheet at Heritage. Tony, I don't know if you had a chance to send this around. It's called the Facts About Election Integrity and the Need for States to Fix Their Election System. It's up on the Heritage website. This is basically a 7-page best practices list of what we think states ought to do to fix their vulnerabilities. My name's not on it, but I wrote it. And in essence, it's a bullet point list of what states ought to do to handle their voter registration rolls and keep them accurate, how to handle absentee ballots, et cetera. The omnibus bill that Texas is working on right now is a good bill, but I would tell you there are 2 things that unless I'm mistaken, I don't think are in the bill that need to be in it, and I would hope perhaps they could be added in a conference committee. Look, there's a whole series of things that need to be done, but one of the most important is something that both Georgia and Florida did. Look, Georgia's had a great voter ID law since the 2008 presidential election. Texas started working on its not too long after Georgia's went into effect. But the Georgia law had one big failing. It only applied to in-person voting. And all of you saw the emphasis on mail-in ballots, on absentee ballots, particularly from the left last year. Absentee ballots, as you know, are the biggest source of fraud because they're voted outside the supervision of election officials and outside the watch of poll watchers. Texas has had a whole series of prosecutions by the Texas AG, who's frankly been doing a good job on investigating election fraud. But so many of those cases involve absentee ballots and illegal vote harvesting. By the way, your law that bans vote harvesting by third parties, that would be overridden by the federal bill that's now in Congress. You would have to allow vote harvesting. Think about what that would mean in Texas. But anyway, the Georgia omnibus bill, the one that got so much criticism, extended the state's voter ID requirement to absentee ballots. They matched what Alabama did a couple of years ago, what Kansas did a couple of years ago. Florida has done the same thing. And I would tell you, I think it's very, very important that that be a change in Texas law. You've got a good voter ID law. It's weaker than it should be, not because the legislature wanted it that way, but because of stupid decisions by liberal federal judges in the state. But it needs to be extended to absentee ballots. The other really big thing that needs to be done, and both Florida and Georgia did this, is they banned Zuck bucks. All of you, I'm sure, are aware that Mark Zuckerberg used a supposedly nonpartisan nonprofit to funnel $450 million to county election officials, particularly in battleground states. I've seen an estimate that at least 36 million of those dollars went into Texas. Almost all of that money, the vast majority of it, went into large, liberal, urban districts, Democratic strongholds. And the whole point of it was basically to move the get out the vote effort of the Democratic Party into the official arms of local government. And what it did is it created unequal voting opportunities for people who lived in urban districts versus more rural areas. This made a big difference in Pennsylvania in the last election. And if this money isn't banned, you're going to see it happening again, which is one of the, I actually think that was one of the biggest factors in what may have changed the outcome of last year's election. And so other states are doing it. So if there's anything that can be added, I mean, like I said, I got a whole long list of things that I think ought to be done. But those two would be the biggest things I would hope that perhaps could get into the conference committee. The other problem that you all have in places like Harris County and elsewhere, of course, is non-citizens easily getting on the voter rolls and voting. Most counties are doing absolutely nothing to verify citizenship. There are basic fixes to this. One of the most easiest is cross-referencing DMV records with voter registration records, so that when individuals who are here as aliens but here legally go in and get a driver's license, which they can do, that information is cross-referenced to make sure that they don't get driver's licenses. You should be using jury information too, so that when people are called for jury duty and they're excused because they're not a US citizen, that information ought to be sent back to election officials so it can be used to make sure they're taken off the list. So I'll be happy to answer questions. I will tell you, in Arizona, as you know, look, there's an audit going on prompted by the state legislature there. They are auditing Maricopa County, which is over 2 million ballots. It's the vast majority of votes in the state. They are running into all kinds of problems. The Democrats have filed a series of lawsuits to try to stop the audit. So far, they've been unsuccessful. And the latest now is that they are using their power of having taken over the US Justice Department to try to stop the audit. The woman who is running the Civil Rights Division right now is this radical leftist from Stanford University. I've had many experiences, bad experiences with her over the years. She just sent a letter to Arizona telling them that they were potentially violating, if you can believe this, the Voting Rights Act for conducting an audit. There's absolutely no legal basis for her letter, but that's not stopping her because she's one of the worst partisans on the left I've ever seen. And what that tells you is that the Biden administration is willing to use the law enforcement powers of the Justice Department for partisan political targeting. So that's a real danger. It's one that Texas is going to face over the next 4 years, particularly when it comes to doing redistricting. Because in essence, what you have to think of the Justice Department is, just think of the Justice Department as being under the complete and total control of the ACLU, the NAACP, La Raza, and all of those radical left-wing organizations, because that in essence is what's happening right now. So I'd be happy to answer questions about this. We don't know a lot about the audit because the details are, we don't have that many details, but I'm glad it's going on because hopefully it'll help settle all of some of the outstanding questions that we have about last year's election and what happened in Arizona. So happy to answer questions, Tony.
Thank you, Hans. I think we have addressed the Zuckerbill, that what we call it, Zuckerbucks or something like that.
Yes.
Isn't that true? I see you're shaking your head, Representative Jaton, or Representative Jaton or Senator Hughes. Didn't we? Go ahead, JC. Did we not bring that bill up?
We did get it out of the House. Senator Hughes may be able to give an update on the Senate, I think.
Okay, Senator.
No, go ahead. No, thank you. So I put that in Senate Bill 7. So the way we passed Senate Bill 7, out of the Senate. We included that provision, and we expect to put that in the conference committee in the final version of Senate Bill 7. But yes, we also, Dion and I were just texting about that. We also have the bill that Representative Jaton sent us from Representative Phil King, and Phil and I were texting about it last night. And so that was in Senate Bill 7, again, on those outside grants. We put that in Senate Bill 7. We expect to put that back in the conference committee. And the standalone bill by Representative King is over in the Senate. We've planned to hear that Monday. And I think there's also a Senate bill over in the House. So, yes, that should be in the final version of Senate Bill 7, plus in a couple of standalone bills. Also, as far as the voter ID for mail ballots, and by the way, Counselor, thank you so much for all your labor, all your smart work on this around the country. I remember your testimony. I was over in the House. I remember that Senate proceeding on voter ID, and thank you for doing all this. As far as the voter ID for mail ballots, that's correct. We have passed a standalone bill by Senator Creighton that requires voter ID for mail ballots. That bill's over in the House. And then the House had a bill by Representative Cody Harris, my neighbor here in East Texas, requiring voter ID for mail ballots. And we also believe that will be in the final version of Senate Bill 7. So both of those big ones that you mentioned, those are already or will be in a couple of different bills that we're passing this session.
So I think they read your articles.
Look, the other thing I want to tell the senator and representatives is this. Look, when these bills get passed, you all should expect, and I know you expect, you're going to get all of these bad attacks by the left, by media sources, the same way the Georgia legislators did, the Florida legislators. But what I would tell you is you should come out fighting. That's what the Georgia legislators did on this. That's what the Georgia governor did. They came out fighting, and they fought back, saying that they were making it easier to vote but harder to cheat. And they fought back against all the claims that they were imposing Jim Crow. And let me tell you, I think it actually worked. You can see that many of the corporations who were criticizing, from Delta to Coca-Cola, have started backing down and backing up. Coca-Cola actually fired its general counsel after this because the public supports these claims. I mean, I just saw the latest polling on this, and the polling is extremely clear that the majority of voters, including a majority of Democrats and a majority of African Americans, others, support greater security in the election process. So in fact, the voters are all on your side on this. And this constant cry of racism, they've been crying this for so long that people aren't paying much attention to it anymore. Yeah, the media is, but you all should realize that the voters in the state are on your side, and they just aren't going to listen. They're just going to dismiss these claims that, for example, having a voter ID for an absentee ballot the same way for in-person voting is somehow racist. They just don't believe that. So I'll tell you, stay strong and fight back, because the other states have been doing that, and I think they've been very successful in doing so.
Good. Thank you. I think that's very good advice. We got strong people here in Texas, so I have a feeling that all of them will be doing that. So thank you for that. Representative Jaton, did you want to say something?
No, I agree. I think, we're going to keep on fighting back. And as long as we talk about what's in the bill, you're right. People do agree with what's in the bill. There's still a lot of misinformation about, voter suppression and different things about it. And so as long as we continue to push out the truth, the people are with us on it. And so we just got to keep on fighting that battle.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Senator. I know that we're making those bills very strong, so thank you. Okay, Hans, I would like to introduce you to Karen, who is our woman that does the questions. She put you on the hot seat. There might be a question or two for the representative and senator, but she's our person that's going to take over at this point. So go ahead, Karen.
All right, welcome to the hot seat, Hans.
That's okay. I've been in it before.
I prefer to be called the chat chief because these questions all come from everybody watching and they put them in the chat. The first question is, what do you think of the election machines, in particular the Dominion machines?
Well, that's not something you have to worry about in Texas, because I think you all know that when they tested them, Texas refused to certify them. Look, what I'll say about that is that I think the testing that states do before they allow voting equipment to be sold in their states needs to be better and more thorough. But I will say that, look, all of the claims that were made by Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood, they made a lot of claims, but they didn't really present any evidence to support it. And evidence means getting, for example, a computer software expert in who's actually examined the equipment, examined the software, examined the source code for folks who know about IT matters, and can actually say, yes, there is a virus, there was a Trojan horse in there. They didn't present any such evidence. Now, I'm not saying, you know, that may not be there, but they didn't present any evidence to support the credibility of the claims they were making. So until that happens, you know, I don't know what to say about it other than we have enough other real problems that we can deal with, and that the two legislators on the line are trying to deal with, which is cleaning up voter rolls, making sure non-citizens aren't registering and voting, making sure that absentee ballots, they have IDs so that it's not easy to cheat, you know, preventing the kind of vote harvesting that happens, particularly in the southern border counties of Texas. I mean, those are all real problems. We've seen those problems in elections. We've seen prosecutions on those issues, and that's what we really ought to be dealing with.
All right, the next question is it true that Maricopa County deleted a directory full of election databases from the 2020 election cycle days before the election equipment was delivered to the audit, as reported by news sources this morning?
Look, I don't have any inside sources in Arizona, so I'm reading the same reports that you are. If that's true, that raises pretty major and substantial issues about what happened in Arizona.
All right. HR 1 is clearly unconstitutional, so why do we not use the Jefferson-Hamilton Article 6 annulment?
Well, the problem is it's a mixed bag. Remember, it's a 900-page bill. It has many different provisions. And while I would certainly agree that there are many provisions in it that are blatantly unconstitutional, unfortunately, there are other provisions that aren't. They're just really bad policy. And the reason for this is that, remember, the Constitution says that while states generally set the rules for congressional elections, Congress can at any time set the rules for the time, place, and manner of congressional elections. So some of these provisions, like I said, they may be really bad, but they may still be constitutional, while other provisions are clearly unconstitutional. They remind me of what Justice Scalia once said, that unfortunately there are some laws that while they are really stupid, they're still constitutional. What the bottom line is that if this passes and a lawsuit is filed, I have no doubt that the Supreme Court eventually would throw out many of the provisions, but others they probably would not, which is why we need to stop it in the legislature before we actually get to court.
All right. Does not motor voter make citizenship confirmation by attestation, and that has been used to ban cross-check citizenship already?
No, there's nothing. There's not yet a federal law that prohibits states from trying to check the citizenship status of individuals. Yes, there is a question under the NVRA on the voter registration form that asks, are you a US citizen? But what that means is that if an alien answers yes, they're going to get registered and they're going to get voted. And I've got cases in the election fraud database we maintain at the Heritage Foundation, which is a database of proven election fraud cases of non-citizens who were caught eventually, who had answered yes on the question and registered and voted in numerous American elections. So that's not good enough. There needs to be verification of citizenship by election officials, frankly, the same way there ought to be verification of residency. And if I can expand on this for just a second, I don't think this requires a state law. This just requires county election officials to take advantage of the tools that they have. And let me give you an example of this, okay? Look, in our election fraud database, we have plenty of cases of people who, it turns out, claimed as a residential address, a commercial address, an industrial park, a commercial property, a vacant lot where they don't really live. There's no reason that should be able to happen. Why? Because look, what's the number one goal of county governments in every state, including in Texas? It's collecting property taxes, because that's how they fund things. Well, let me tell you what county officials ought to be doing, election officials, but they're not. When they get a new voter registration form, they ought to take the address that's listed as a resident and go to the county tax department and say, is this really a residential address? Because if the county tax department comes back and says, no, that's a commercial property because they're paying a commercial property tax, then that should raise a red flag with the election officials to immediately investigate, because clearly somebody is lying and it's a fraudulent voter registration form. Not only that, but what the other thing they ought to do is, if the county tax department comes back and says, well, yeah, it's a residential property, it's a single family home, the election official in the county should check that address and find out how many people are registered at this single family home, including this new registration. If 40 people are registered at a single family home, again, that should raise a red flag immediately, and election officials should immediately investigate, because one of two things is going on. Either people are being fraudulently registered at this address, or all these people who have moved and no longer live there are still registered to vote. In either event, they are not using the resources they have within the county to check residential addresses of people registering to vote. Just doing that would clean up a lot of the voter registration rolls across the state. That doesn't require a new state law. It just requires election officials to do their jobs and start taking advantage of the information they already have.
All right. Next question is, how can anyone provide evidence when the state election leaders would not provide access? I have heard that the Georgia ballots have been wiped clean, and therefore the evidence would be gone.
Well, I don't know that happened in Georgia. If it did happen, then folks are in big trouble, because there's a federal statute that requires election officials to preserve all records related to a federal election for 22 months after the election. The National Voter Registration Act gives the public access to all voter registration records. That's not being taken advantage of enough. And otherwise, there are a lot of state FOIA laws, Freedom of Information Act laws, that allow you to also get other information. It's a complicated area, but there's a lot of federal and state statutes that entitle the public and other organizations to get access to this kind of information. So people just have to try to take advantage of that. And when election officials don't want to comply with these laws, they need to be sued.
All right. Is the Heritage Foundation pooling their information with other organizations such as True the Vote? Do you work together with other organizations?
Oh yeah, we have a very a very big operation for all the various coalitions that are working in this, including, by the way, the Texas Public Policy Institute that we work with all the time on these issues. I also work a lot with ALEC, with the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is made up of conservative state legislators across the country. But we've been working on this issue now for quite a while. So yeah, we have a very broad coalition, and our sister organization, Heritage Action, which is a 501c4, so it can do advocacy, has been working with state legislators in all of the states I mentioned previously, including Florida, Georgia, and Arizona, to the point where about a month ago, the New York Times wrote a hit piece on the Heritage Foundation, and again, me personally, because they were complaining that some states were actually following many of our recommendations that we had made.
All right, that looks like all the direct questions that have been asked in the chat of you, sir.
Thanks.
Excellent. Yes. Are there any other questions that? Oh yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Well, you have 9 minutes left before we have to end the call, and we do have our challenge. Shirley is going to be on the call, is going to put out the challenge. Maybe what we could do is, Shirley, you could take the challenge. Are you prepared to do that this morning? You need to unmute. But so Hans, don't go away yet. Can you stay on for a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tony Ann. We started these calls to set up a grassroots networks, one that would inform and communicate election integrity measures to our callers. Why? So that we could help our 87th legislators take their work or get their work through. Well, we've been at this since January the 22nd for a total of 15 calls. We've had the weekly updates from our House and Senate officials, and we've heard from other guests. They've covered many bills under SB 7, HB 6. So the action challenge for today is to hear from everyone on this call and let us know of just one bill that struck your interest, and email that bill number with one or two statements on what you know it's all about. No legalese, please, just in your own words, what resonated with you. And send that one bill to TexasElectionsReform.com, TexasElectionsReform.com. Why? Well, your input will give us feedback on a couple of fronts. First, how effective these calls have been. And most importantly, second, what interested you and will help you speak the truth and help refute the voter suppression claims that we've heard about during all these weeks. So again, just one action item that's resonated with you. Tell us the number, the name of the bill, and in one or two sentences what it's about. It would greatly help us, but more importantly, it would greatly move this army that we're building to do just what Hans told us this morning, is get out in front. We know this is going to pass, but we also know that we're going to get an onslaught of swarming hornets after us when this takes place. So let's get ready and take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. That is excellent. So I put that challenge out to all of you. I wanted Hans to hear the challenge, and I do want to ask Karen, allow Karen to ask Representative Jaton and Senator Hughes some more questions. But first, I want to say, Hans, I know you've got about 5 minutes left, but we want to say thank you very much for being here this morning. Your willingness to share the information you did, to be on the hot seat, and to answer truthfully and of what you know. And you are greatly respected. As you can see, we had almost 140 people on the call this morning wanting to hear that information. And this is a great group of people to share with. So we thank you truly thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us and share this information.
Well, Tony, you're the one that asked me, and I'm always glad to help out. By the way, just very quickly on the whole voter suppression thing, I actually had an article, a commentary at Fox News on Friday that I would urge folks to use that basically tosses back and says the evidence is clear. There's no voter suppression going on anywhere in the country and hasn't been. And that's proven by the latest census report on turnout in the 2020 election. So if you want some ammunition to use with your liberal friends, the article that I had at Fox News on Friday will provide you all the ammunition you need to leave them not being able to respond. So,
well, you know what, maybe what I'll do is I'll put that in TAD Talks for the next week. So thank you for that information. Sure. I did see it, and so I should have had it in this one, but we'll have it in for next week. So Hans, we're going to go into asking some more questions. We want to say thank you. We know that you have 5 minutes where you're more than welcome to stay on as long as you can, but we're probably going to go maybe a minute or two past that. So
no, I think I will get off and get ready I got another call. So if that's okay. All right,
thank you, Hans. Bye-bye. We really do appreciate you very much.
Good luck getting those bills through conference and completed.
Thank you, Hans.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Karen, can you ask, put the hot seat, put our two representative senator on the hot seat and ask a few questions.
All right, Senator Hughes and Representative Jaton, who is on the conference committee for SB 7 and HB 6?
So the conference committee has not been appointed yet, and that's going to happen here in a couple of days. The bill passed the Senate, went over to the House, and passed the House, just waiting for the paperwork to be done. As you know, there's rules that have to be followed and laws for that. So we don't know who's going to be on the conference committee. You would normally expect the author of the bill in the Senate, the sponsor bill in the House, to be on it. The lieutenant governor in the Senate and the speaker in the House appoints those members, but they talk to the author and the sponsor to do that. So we don't know exactly who it's going to be, but you can expect it to be a Republican majority, strong conservatives who are familiar with this, and it'll give us a strong bill.
And that floats right into the next. Who appoints the members of the conference committee? Is it 5 by the Speaker of the House and 5 by the Lieutenant Governor?
That's exactly right.
All right. What is Texas or others doing about the Chinese cyber theft of our elections?
Oh boy, we've learned from the Secretary of State's office that our system, the system that handles voting, the voting processes, is attacked hundreds and even thousands of times a day. Ping is being hit for vulnerabilities, probed, trying to hack into it. Many of these we believe are from foreign governments. And over the last 2 legislative sessions, we've done a lot to protect all of our states' infrastructure, not just the voting systems, as far as to make sure we have the best technology. And it's also meant putting a lot of money into that. It's pretty important. If they're able to hack into those systems, the damage they can do is hard for us to imagine. And so the good news is there's no evidence that any Texas elections have been affected by foreign governments or other people trying to hack into the system, but they're always trying. So we know what's happening. We know they're trying, and we're putting every measure we have in place to stop it. But it's a real problem, and we believe it's just going to get worse.
And Dion Starn says, HB 4507 would have at least protected our state elections. Is there any way we can get it amended onto something else coming up in the Senate?
Yeah, so go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I believe that's the HR 1 trigger bill. That was an important one that was on the ballot on the calendar towards the end, and we didn't get to it on the House side. I've started talking to some on the Senate side, and Senator Hughes, I'd really like to spend more time talking to you about it, but that's the one where if HR 1 or any significant federal election laws come down that we disagree with, a committee is formed, and we get to determine how we handle our voter rolls and whether or not we want to decouple our elections, because as Hans had mentioned, Constitution allows the federal government to dictate, certain parameters for federal races, but when it comes to the state and local races, we have full control over that. And if it ever came to a point where the federal government was doing anything that we felt was compromising our elections, we could take action on it.
Representative, that's right. If they try to do things like take away voter ID or make us do same-day registration or stop checking signatures on mail ballots, anything like that, you're so right. It may be necessary for us to have our own system. It'd be expensive, it will be complicated, but it will be worth it to save the integrity and accessibility of our elections.
That's right.
And what is the legal justification they use to include non-citizens in the census and in turn redistricting?
There was a Supreme Court case about that. In fact, Sue Evenwell from Mount Pleasant, a Republican woman and former SREC member and county chair, was the plaintiff in that lawsuit because the Constitution is not specific as to who is counted. And so that case went to the Supreme Court because the law has been really fuzzy there. And so there are probably people who can answer this better than me, but as a practical matter, we are not required to count non-citizens, but because of the way they take the census, there's no way for us to go in and prove who the citizens and who the non-citizens are. The Trump administration, of course, had tried to put in the census process determining citizenship, but that didn't get done. So unfortunately, we are stuck with whatever numbers the U.S. Census Bureau gives us. And it's a huge problem. We have many districts in Texas, in the Texas House, and even in the Texas Senate, where though the districts have the same population as the other state rep and state house districts, the number of voters is much smaller because there are so many non-citizens. So even though those folks can't vote, they get counted for purposes of redistricting. It's a real challenge. And of course, I'll defer to Representative Jaton or anybody else on the call, but the law is pretty messed up on that, and it's federal law. There's really nothing we can do about it. It's very frustrating.
So Karen, we can do one more question because it's 8:01 at this point. So is there one other question that we have on there?
Yes, when SB 7 is passed by the legislature, who will lead the PR campaign to explain it to the Texas citizens?
Oh, good. Good question.
A lot of people are helping with that. And we already talked about the Texas Public Policy Foundation, of course, and you would be pleased to know, I think, that your friends in the legislature who've been fighting this alongside Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick and Speaker Phelan have already done a whole lot of media on this. And in fact, I was visiting with a reporter from the New York Times yesterday about Senate Bill 7 and what the final bill might look like. And so it's a challenge for us because we're tempted just to go on Fox News and Newsmax and talk to our friends, but we realize we have to go out there and talk to CNN and talk to the New York Times and the Washington Post, because so many people in the middle and corporate types and many suburban voters that are not political, that's all they're watching, that's all they're reading. So don't worry, we're going to have a strong, clear message for all those media outlets to get out the truth, because these bills make our elections more accountable, more accessible, and more secure. And Hans said it earlier, the phrase that I've used from day one, these bills will make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And we're going to keep saying that because it's the truth.
That's a great message. Representative Jaton, did you want to add on to that at all?
No, I think that's right. We're going to continue to go out there and speak the truth about what's in this bill, and it's going to where you guys fit in is helping us to make sure that we're sharing that message, because only so many people are watching it on the news and so many people are reading the articles, and so the more you share it with your friends and help to spread that message, the better.
Excellent. Very good. I agree. That's a great message. We're here to make that happen. And so I am going to wrap this up. Again, thank you to everybody. Shirley, thank you for the challenge. I hope that you will send an email to Shirley. And I don't have a guest speaker for next week, but I've got a really good idea. So I'm pretty excited that this might also help with our messaging. So anyway, so that's to be announced. Obviously, we didn't have one last week, and look at, we got Hans for this week. So be prepared, look out for who we're going to have as our guest speaker next week. Thank you all. Stay on top of what's going on. Go onto the TLO website and see what's happening, and we'll keep you informed. And thank you, everybody, for what you're doing. Have a blessed weekend. Bye.
Tony Ann, what is the email address you want everyone to send those, your action item to?
Hey, Shirley, did you want, go ahead,
Yes.
Shirley.
Yeah, it's Texas Elections Reform at gmail.com. Texas Elections Reform at gmail.com. Thank you.
And is that Texas spelled out or is it TX? Oh, there it is. I see.
All spelled out. Yeah. Texas Elections Reform at gmail.com.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator. Oh, great information. Thanks, JC.